Polish is by far the hardest language in the world, but now that I've been studying it for a year and a half, here are 10 things I wish I knew before learning Polish. If you learn Polish as a foreigner, you're going to stand out a lot, and in a good way. Now, there are some people on the internet that are taking advantage of this, and I have a funny story. So a couple weeks ago, I got invited to Dzień Dobry TVN, but I ended up losing that spot to another guy because I wasn't prepared with my Polish, and they gave it to him. If you guys have followed him, his name is like Wladys EM or something, and he's this Korean guy who speaks like really good Polish. Turns out this guy is not even Korean. He's from Uzbekistan, and because he speaks Russian already, that's why he was able to learn Polish so quickly. So he's been doing all these TV interviews trying to claim that he's Korean when he's actually not. So now there's this whole big drama about it. And I just think it's funny. It's very clear reason why he's pretending to be Korean. He's just doing it for the girls, right? If you're a foreigner and you speak Polish, man, you become way more attractive, whether you're a guy or a girl, because you become like way more rare. And this is like a thing all over the world where instead of you trying to compete for the guys or girls in a country that go after foreigners, now you're a foreigner who speaks Polish. Everybody all of a sudden opens up into your dating pool. That's why one of the main reasons to learn the language. There are so many opportunities to be on TV, to be on podcasts, to just be a celebrity here. The door is literally wide open. And one of the best examples is the Iranian guy. I forgot what his channel name is, but him and the other girl Sahar, they're Iranians that speak like perfect Polish. It's actually incredible. And that's why they were able to get popular like so quickly. Their videos aren't even that good. They're just rambling for like 20 minutes, but the fact that they speak Polish makes them instantly famous and popular, right? It's way harder than you think, but it's not impossible. I was very arrogant before coming to this country because I'm quite gifted in communication and languages. I got to B1 in Spanish in 6 months. I thought that I was able to pick up Polish in 6 months and I can get to like A2 or B1 easily, but that is not the case. So now I've had to reframe my mentality from, okay, I'm gonna learn B1 Polish in a year to I'm gonna learn B1 Polish no matter how long that it takes. Because if you try to put like a time limit on it and you don't reach the level that you want to reach, sometimes it can discourage you and be like, man, if I can't even accomplish this, I'm not going to even try. Learning any kind of language is a long-term journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Now I'm seeing so many foreigners who have learned to speak the language, and I'm like, okay, if they can do it, why can't I do it? And I think that's a really good attitude to have. The difficulty level will range based on what language you start with. So if you already speak a Slavic language, Russian or Ukrainian, even Czech, Slovak, it's very easy for you to learn Polish because they're very similar. You could probably get to B1 within 6 months. If you come from English, to get to B1 is going to take roughly 3 to 5 years because there's a lot of grammatical stuff that is just very difficult that we don't have in English. Surprisingly though, if you speak Spanish, it's actually really easy. Well, not really easy, but easier than other languages. A lot of Latinos actually end up speaking Polish. My theory is that because a lot of the guys specifically, they do it for the girls, obviously. Surprisingly, a lot of Spanish grammar also exists in Polish. So for example, like gender nouns, having the adjectives agree with the nouns. Spanish has this form of a case system in subjunctive. Spanish also has reflexive verbs, just like Polish. Conjugating the verbs is very similar as well. And I would argue that the sentence structure in Spanish is also similar to Polish. That's why I've been able to learn Polish quite quickly. If you guys want to see me speaking Polish, I have videos on it on my channel already. And I'm going to be doing a lot of collaborations this summer with me doing interviews in Polish. Watch out for that so you guys can see my progress.
I też oglądałem Miłość jest ślepa, wersja polska.
Nie wiem nawet o czym to jest.
Naprawdę to bardzo fajnie, ale teraz mogę rozumieć memy o tym? Or like...
Tak, o tym serialu.
Polish people are supportive, but also unforgiving. So there's like this weird duality that exists where Polish people are excited by any foreigner that tries to learn the language. But when you're in this weird middle ground where you're not quite fluent yet, but you're not quite a beginner, then it can feel very unforgiving. Polish people even correct themselves amongst each other. It's quite funny to watch, actually. So they can't even really speak proper Polish. It's unfortunate because I've been studying Polish for about a year and a half, and I feel like my reading is very good. My reading is almost B1, and I can understand a lot when I'm watching TV. But when I'm trying to have conversations with people in real life, they just talk so fast and it's just like my brain can't comprehend it fast enough. It's very, very frustrating. So at first, Polish people will respect you for even trying. Over a period of time, the expectation slowly goes up for the amount of Polish you should speak. I think what Polish people really respect is just effort. When people have been here for 7 years and they don't speak a lick of Polish, you can tell whether they actually tried or they just didn't put any effort at all. And it's really funny to me that, especially Western foreigners. A lot of Western foreigners will complain about immigrants coming into their country. These immigrants are refusing to integrate. But then they'll come to Poland and they're like, I love how Poland is anti-immigration. And then you ask them, have you learned the language after 5 years? They're like, no, of course not. And that to me is like the biggest hypocrisy ever. Like Western expats are by far the worst. I've also met a lot of Indians who have lived here 7 years, 8 years, still don't speak Polish. A lot of people from Africa. But there are people who do take the time to learn the language. And it's highly worth it because if you are a foreigner and you speak Polish, you become like an instant celebrity. And that's why I don't understand why more people don't do it. So I just saw it as an opportunity that if you're a foreigner and you can speak Polish, so many doors are going to open for you. Translating from English doesn't always work. But surprisingly, a lot of times if I were to translate from Spanish, it does work. You really have to change the way that you think about language when you're learning Polish because the case system does a lot of the heavy lifting. And a perfect example of this is the idea of trust, right? So in English, we'll say, I trust you, whereas in Polish, you'll say, ufam ci. And because it's used in the dative case, the idea behind trust is that I give it to you. But in Spanish, it's like, confío en ti. I trust in you, right? So every single language has a way of how they express emotions. Learning Polish, there's like a lot of things in the background. Verbs get conjugated and verbs also get conjugated based on gender and everything changes based on the case. In Spanish, you conjugate verbs. In Polish, you literally conjugate every single word. Even the adjectives, it's so annoying. And that's why it's important to learn about the culture of the language you're trying to learn because that also gives you a lot of insight into how they structure the language. Polish as a language has a lot of base rules that you're expected to follow, but there's a lot of freedom in expression and sentence structure is also extremely flexible. And I think that's exactly how Polish culture is, where there's a lot of base societal values and norms that you're expected to follow. There's a lot of freedom of expression of how you can say things. People don't really get offended here easily. And there's a lot of like things here in the country where it may seem illegal, but there's usually like a legal way around it, right? So in order to achieve it, you just have to follow the rules. Polish language is kind of the same, where like you want to express an idea, there are many ways to get there. You just have to make sure you're following the base rules of like the cases and the tenses and all that stuff. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Work on one skill at a time. I really hate the way Polish is taught, especially in the textbooks. They skip through so much grammar in just one, and they expect you to learn it so quickly. If you're not a Latin language speaker like Spanish, French, or Italian, or come from a Slavic country, a lot of it's not going to make sense to you. How to conjugate verbs, the fact that nouns have genders, and in Polish they have 3 genders, masculine, feminine, and neutral, which is not as hard as I thought it was going to be because a lot of it's intuitive. I encourage people to work at one skill at a time. So in the beginning, I would just work on conjugation, slowly work through each individual case. I would start with accusative and then maybe go to genitive. This makes things way more manageable. And I think someone needs to make a better book because all the curriculum I've seen around Polish honestly sucks. Verbs and pronunciations will mess you up a lot. I highly recommend people spending a lot of time in the beginning working on just pronunciation alone. I was able to get it quite quickly because in Mandarin, we have a lot of these consonant sounds that they have in Polish. But if you come from other languages, it can be quite difficult being able to tell between the different sounds, especially because a lot of the verbs sound the same. For example, widzieć, which means to see, wiedzieć, which means to know, or wiedzieć, which means to believe. You see how similar they all sound? For me, what helped with that is I read a lot, right? I read a lot of subtitles when I'm playing games or when I'm watching TV. And Polish, thankfully, just like Spanish, how it's written is how it's said all the time. There's none of these weird exceptions like we have in English where things can be written the same way but pronounced completely different. And one of the big problems about Polish is that it's written in like the wrong alphabet. If they had like a special alphabet for it or if it was written in Cyrillic alphabet, I feel like the language would make a lot of sense. But because they use the Latin alphabet, that's why it kind of looks like a mess. A lot of these consonant sounds combined make up like one syllable. So for example, the word for fog, mgła. When you look at it, it looks totally weird and it's like 3 consonants back to back, but it's actually like one syllable. Learning vocabulary is quite difficult. Half of the Spanish verbs are just English verbs with the Spanish twist, right? So there's a lot of those kind of verbs too in Polish actually, like interpretować, decydować, kontrolować, studiować. So a lot of these verbs are very similar to like the English version, but they also kind of have separate meanings in Polish, so you got to be careful with that. So something that helped me with Polish pronunciation is just like how in Mandarin, all the vowels have tones. In Polish, the consonants have tones. And that is like a visual representation that allows me to think about like how Polish works, you know, and to distinguish a lot of the sounds. But a lot of the sounds are really not intuitive, you know, like for example, the RZ makes a Z sound. I think it would have been better if they just changed this to like an X, you know? It's frustrating sometimes where I'll ask my teacher, why is it this way in Polish? And she just says, I don't know. It doesn't make sense, but that's just the way it is. I really hate that. It's so annoying. Number 3, input is everything. So I have scoured all over the internet and all over the world for the best resources of how to input Polish. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of really good resources out there. And one of the big issues is that a lot of the TV shows, especially on Netflix, the subtitles and what they're saying don't line up. Now that I'm approaching B1 level, that's not that much of an issue anymore because I can hear what they're saying and I read the text and it's close enough where I can like, okay, I kind of know what they're talking about. But there are certain shows where the subtitles are very, very good. Mostly cartoons. Pokemon is the one that I recommend to people from the beginning because it's enjoyable to watch. The subtitles are correct. I also like the Polish dub from Avatar: The Last Airbender. The problem is that they have the subtitle problem again. But if you're just starting out, you can just use English subtitles with the Polish audio. A lot of anime, for example, like Devil May Cry, Leviathan, Rising Impact, this Golf one, also the subtitles are correct. So you gotta do a lot of searching, but there's a lot of Polish dubs in anime and they're actually quite good. I would stay away from books unless you really like doing that. It allows you to like slowly read through things and write down notes, but I don't know, for me, I just don't like reading books. I feel like it's a little bit too difficult, especially early on. So I would just stick to TV, video games, watching the news, or listening to the podcasts if you can. I would avoid live action shows from the beginning because how they speak is very hard to pick up. A lot of the words and phrases that they use are like slang and colloquial stuff. However, if you're at my level, like A2, almost B1, I thought that I wouldn't be able to handle live action, but now I actually can. And I can follow most of the things that they say. One of the best mediums is video games. If you're a gamer, Polish is actually a great language to play video games in because all the PlayStation Store games like Uncharted, Last of Us, Spider-Man, God of War, all those have perfect Polish audio and the subtitles are totally correct. If you play Overwatch or Rocket League, those also have Polish dubs. You probably can't do this alone. I've seen some rare cases where people were able to study Polish by themselves. Some crazy polyglots or people that have YouTube channels. But unfortunately, as someone who's like a regular person who's trying to learn languages, I was able to study a lot of Spanish by myself. I think I took 3 months of lessons and that's all I really needed. Polish, I've taken about 8 or 9 months of lessons and I still need more. And unfortunately, a lot of lessons can be quite expensive, like $15 an hour, $20 an hour. So learning Polish is quite an investment. Group classes are a good way to like get introduced to the language. I find that the group classes end up with like you practicing speaking Polish with your other students who are also not that good in Polish. So you don't really get good practice. It's kind of like the blind leading the deaf, right? I first started out with like krok po kroku and I thought that was pretty good, but it was also still quite confusing to get through that by myself. My Polish teacher now is one of my friends from Krakow. Our brains are literally work the same way. We're interested in the same stuff. We're like the same person, copy paste. Just because someone has all the credentials doesn't mean that they're a good teacher. You just need to find somebody that you vibe with and that can teach it in a way that you personally understand. And number 1, I think that the hardest part about Polish is by far the case system, and that's going to just come with time. After a year and a half, I still struggle with the case system a lot. I know a ton of vocabulary and I can understand when people are talking. I can read really well, but trying to produce the cases in real time, I struggle with that all the time. And this is the thing that I've accepted, that is like, I don't think I can get this quickly. It's just going to come over a long period of time and a lot of trial and error. So if you're making a lot of mistakes with the cases, Polish people are actually quite forgiving about it. If it's discouraging you, don't worry, you're not alone. This is literally my biggest weakness in the language as well. So what do you guys think? Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments down below. Do zobaczenia.